on the resolution, terminally ill patients have the right to die when and how they choose.
Okay. Last year in August, a man by the name of Tony Nicholson was suffering from a terminal illness which is known as locked-in syndrome. He was interviewed by CNN. In an interview, the article states, and I quote, "The former rugby player was left paralyzed from the neck down by catastrophic stroke 7 years ago and lost a high court battle last week to gain a legal right to end his life when he chose. His condition meant it was impossible for him to take his own life, and he wanted the legal right to have a doctor take his life without fear of prosecution." And in the interview, Tony describes his situation saying, and I quote, "Most of my body is paralyzed, but my mind is as it was before the stroke. All I can move is my head, and the stroke took away my power to speech. Now I talk to people with a Perspex spelling board, a computer operated by my eye blinks. Therefore, I'm here to debate the following resolution. Terminally ill patients should have the right to die when and how they choose. The value I have chosen is the quality of life. People should have the right to a choice that determines whether or not they will have to undergo excruciating day-to-day pain, which in turn could have a negative effect on their personality as well as their human life. Also, a negative effect on those involved with them. The word I chose to define was right, which means fitting, appropriate, suitable, most convenient, desirable, or favorable. Contention 1. The pursuit of happiness. All people that live have a desire to fulfill what they believe will make them happy or benefit their lives for the betterment of themselves and those around them. This is one great rule our country is built on. In the Constitution, it states, and I quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they have endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." This shows that this country is not only built on a system that believes that we have the right to choose, but that the right to choose is unalienable, which is defined as not to be separated, given away, or taken away. And when you take away this right, you take away the right to dignified human life. Contention 2, human dignity. Human dignity and death with dignity should be considered more important than existing with a terminal ill condition that inhibits or constricts a person's quality of life. According to the PubMed.gov, after interviewing 988 terminally ill patients from 6 randomly selected U.S. sites, 496, which is 50% of the terminally ill patients reported moderate to severe pain. 514 of them, which is 52%.
Okay. In your affirmative, you talked about patients having the right to pursuit of happiness, and you also had mentioned the Constitution to the right that they should have the right to choose and not alienate. Does that also give them the right about having the right to die should only be allowed for terminally ill patients and not that of someone in great pain? You had also talked about people in great pain, but does it also go against their wishes of, even if they're in great pain, to severe depression, do they have the right as well to die too?
People that are in severe pain and terminally ill? Is that what you're asking?
No, like what about the right should only be limited to terminally ill patients, but not that of someone in great pain or in severe depression? Should they also have the right to die as well?
I believe that in this case it's justifiable based upon the pain that they undergo day to day.
Okay, 1 minute constructive. This is also the time to review your
Okay. My opponent today mentioned the Constitution as having the right to choose, to not alienate themselves, and human dignity in a way that best helps them go forward with this in choosing the right to die. According to dictionary.com, a life is a correspondent state and existence of or principle of existence conceived of as belonging to a soul, an eternal soul. In a famous suit of our time, Terry Shiva collapsed in her St. Petersburg home in Florida and suffered major brain damage due to loss of oxygen and laid in a coma for 2.5 months. The doctors then changed her status to a vegetative state. For the next several years, doctors attempted several tests, such as speech, physical, and experimental treatments, in the hope of returning her to the state of awareness. Her husband, Michael Shiva, was determined to remove her from her feeding tube, and her parents came in to petition the appeal. The parents believed that the daughter was still conscious and the husband did not have the right to pull the tube. In the case of Terry Shiva and the lack of living will that does not permit a family member, and especially a husband, to force his suffrage on a living human being that may be in a vegetable state. First, despite millions of dollars lavished in propaganda, most people do not have living wills. Second, people who sign living wills generally do not thoroughly instruct the way that they want their life and death situations to be handled. Human dignity is defined by dictionary.com as an individual's group sense or self-respect and self-worth, physical and psychologically integrity and empowerment. Thus, contention 1, the Hippocratic Oath and the prohibition of killing, states that the prohibition against killing patients stands as the first promise of self-restraint sworn in the Hippocratic Oath. States that I neither will give a deadly drug to anybody if asked for it, nor will I make a suggestion to this effect. The doctor has a sole duty to prevent this kind of practice, and according to Leon Koss of the University of Chicago, the deepest ethical question restraining physician's power is not the anonymity or freedom of a patient, neither it is his compassion or good intention, rather it is the dignity and mysterious power of human life itself, and therefore also what the oath calls for purity and holiness in someone's life, and that is sworn to devotions. Doctors do not have the right to remove a feeding tube to provide suffrage to an individual, but to ultimately provide care to its fullest. Contention 2, slippery slope that may also lead to legalized murder. If we are providing drugs to murder individuals and removing feeding tubes against the will of the patient, whether they are coherent or not, does that give physicians the right to voluntarily euthanize an individual as well because they say so? Why do we even need to ask for consent then? In the case of Washington versus Glucksberg, the Supreme Court stated that the history of the law's treatment of assisted suicide in this country has been and continues to be of the rejection of nearly all efforts to permit it. That being the case, our decisions lead us to conclude that asserted right to assistance in committing suicide is not fundamental liberty interest protected to the due clause process. And it states that these laws are designed and in place to prevent this sort of practice by doctors and prevent and protect individuals from unscrupulous doctors intended to make anyone suffer. Life, therefore, is an existence conceived to as belonging to the soul, and in many cases, a person having the right to die.
Okay, would you say it's wrong to die?
Would I say it's wrong to die? No.
Okay, so if you were faced with a dramatic choice with someone's life and the outcome of them being in terrible pain and them asking you to put them out of their misery, would you choose to do so or not?
No, I would choose to find every way possible of keeping that person alive,
Even if
whether they would want it or not, because...
That's good, that's good. Even if they were in pain?
Yes.
Okay, so would you agree that letting someone continuously be in pain a form of torture?
No.
No, you wouldn't say...
Not to that stature.
Not to that stature, okay. Do you believe that someone, in a technical term, a vegetable is a form of living?
Yes, because they're in a conscious state, whether they're not talking, or I mean, whether they're not aware of their surroundings at all.
Okay.
Okay, 1 minute, rebuttal by the negative. This is really good.
Okay. I believe I made it clear in this debate that I've told you why I believe that I won the debate, because doctors do have a responsibility to provide sufferers to an individual by removing a feeding tube or providing assisted suicide and administering a drug that can cause death to patients because they asked to. Patients that are in a vegetative state are still conscious, but they may not physically be there or mentally be there, but they are still a human being. And for a doctor to have taken an oath to uphold and protect and treat a patient to their fullest does have the responsibility to keep that oath, whether the patient wants to die or not. In the case of Sherry Shivo, doctors tried and repeatedly tried many experiments to try and keep this lady alive, and hopefully one day of having that one miracle that many people have asked for, whether she's in her state from day one to the 8 years that she was still alive.
Okay. Today, my opponent says that terminally ill patients should not be able to die when and how they choose. And I disagree with his claim, because I believe that if a person is in a state where they are unable to make a choice, and this would not be a quality of life that is sufficient of living. I believe that life is something that's active, something that is continuously growing, and in this case it would not be. Also, I asked him if he believed that letting someone suffer a form of torture, and he himself struggled with the idea of that, and even went on to say that he did not believe so, which means that he believes himself that letting someone suffer in pain is not torture, which is incorrect. Today I have provided evidence showing that terminally ill people should be able to die when and how they choose. I've stated interviews and facts. Research done on terminally ill people showing that life is no longer a quality of life. In most cases, there are some with exception, but as I stated in my warrants, most of them do live in pain and continuously, and they should have the say to end their pain if it is possible, if there is possible solutions to the pursuit of happiness.